Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my review of the 1995 comedy film Houseguest. And if you're having a little bit of deja vu, well, that's normal because I am re-recording this review because for some reason either YouTube muted the audio or I uploaded the video without any audio. So here we are. Uh, House Guest is a film that I've seen a couple times, and it's not what I would consider to be that great of a comedy. It's really like a lot of other equally as generic and fairly forgettable 90s family comedies. That's really what House Guest is. It's got a decent cast, but they can only carry it so far. Now, before I get around to sharing more of my thoughts on the film, I would like to give a special shout out to Abdullah for requesting this review. Now, House Guest is directed by Randall Miller, and prior to directing House Guest, he directed Class Act, starring Kid and Play. And I think his direction is pretty much on par with what he did with that film. It's okay, it's all right, it's adequate enough. I think it captures the comedy in a way that does allow it to have a certain energy to it, a certain jovial nature. Uh, but it also has some moments where it's a little too all over the place. And I think that was definitely kind of a 90s thing where you would have direction that didn't really have the best continuity from one shot to the next. And House Guest is definitely one of those movies because there'll be shots in this film where a character will be on one side of the screen on one side of the camera, and then it'll quick cut and then they'll be somewhere else, and it honestly makes it look like a lot of the characters in this have magical teleportation powers, and it can get a little distracting, to be honest. So I don't really think the focus was the best when it comes to the direction by Miller. I think it was definitely one of those films where the direction was just not really in line correctly. It was just very uneven, and it affected some of the sequences in the movie. It affected how they played out. And the visuals aren't really anything special either in terms of the framework or the camera techniques that he utilizes. But other than the moments where he's just way off the mark, I think it's still serviceable enough when it comes to the direction. And I do think it manages to capture that jovial tone, which I think is definitely what the film was trying to go for. The direction by Randall Miller is very average, but the screenplay is even below that. To me, the script provides a very weak foundation for this film, and in large part due to the two writers, Michael J. Gaetano and Lawrence Gay. These two writers, they're not that good. If you look at their credits, it's not that impressive, and the two of them actually wrote a couple episodes of the miserable failure of a TV show that was the Ferris Bueller TV series. So, having anybody involved with that disaster is not a good thing. Now, apparently, the original script was darker in tone, and then it was toned down when Sinbad was cast. But I don't really know whether or not the original version would have been that much better, considering who these two writers are. I will give the writer some credit. There are some moments with this script that actually aren't that bad, but for the most part, it's very firmly below average and not very good when it comes to a comedy screenplay because a lot of it just isn't very funny. And I don't know if that's due to the fact that Sinbad is a very tame comedian or due to other factors, but it's just not really that funny of a comedy. And then on top of that, it's not really that unique or interesting of a plot. But I do think that the concept still had potential if you had a more dynamic, a more funny lead. Because that really is something that can do a lot of the work for a film like this. Because if you think about it, there's a lot of comedy films that don't necessarily have the most original plots or the most unique storylines. Look at something like Uncle Buck, for instance. But because of the fact that you have a good writer behind the script and you have somebody as amicable and amazing and as hilarious as somebody like John Candy, it turns it into something that is special and it isn't so generic anymore because of the fact that you're not really paying a ton of attention to the plot. You're paying more of attention to the talents of the film's lead. And Houseguest really desperately needed somebody like that. And I don't really feel that Sinbad is on the same level as somebody like John Candy. And what's interesting is apparently, at least according to IMDb, John was originally considered to star in this film. And I think the film would have been much better if he was still around and he was able to star in this. It wouldn't be the same because things would have been changed to fit his character more. But I definitely feel that the presence of somebody like John Candy, a veteran comedian working alongside Phil Hartman, really would have created some comedy gold. And speaking of the generic plot, and it doesn't help that it starts off really awkwardly with a prologue with Kevin Franklin, your main character as a kid, and he's using some other kid to get some change out of a fountain. And the way that it's written, the way that it's acted and directed, it's just bad. It's a really bad start to the movie. And then it flashes forward multiple years later, and Kevin is now grown up and he is living in an apartment in Pittsburgh and he has delusions of grandeur, delusions of being famous and being rich, and he acts them out while he's driving around his piece of crap car. And it's supposed to be endearing, but the way that it's written, it's more obnoxious than anything else. And Sinbad doesn't really help either because he's just making it even more obnoxious. It wasn't charming at all to me to watch this grown man drive around in a crappy car and fantasize and talk to himself about being a rich and successful man. And in all honesty, a lot of the get rich quick schemes that he tries to get involved with, or the get rich tapes that he watches at home, it's more sad than anything else. And I think that's a missed opportunity by the writers to provide more depth to his character. And I think there is a little bit of an attempt to do that near the end, but I honestly feel the writers fumbled it. I don't think they really handled that as well as they should have. Eventually, Kevin winds up getting in trouble with the mob because he got a loan from some loan sharks and he hasn't paid them back. So now they're on his butt and they want money. He doesn't have it. So he tries to run away. He actually tries to fly to the Bahamas or something, and he gets caught by the mob guys, but he finds a way to escape from the mob by overhearing a conversation between Gary, uh, and that involves him waiting to pick up his childhood friend Derek Bond. And he overhears a conversation, hears that he's a black man, and so he decides to swoop in and say that he's Derek. And that's how he becomes a house guest at Gary's home. And the dynamic between Kevin and Gary is easily one of the best things about this script and about the film. But it also has some points where I definitely feel it could have been better, because it seems like a lot of the best lines between the two and a lot of the best jokes or gags, it's just improv. It's not even from the script, because Sinbad and Phil improvised a lot of dialogue in this movie. And there's a scene with Sinbad where he's explaining some kind of traumatic event that changed him so much, because he's picking up on the fact that Gary doesn't really trust him. You know, that Gary's starting to think that, oh man, you've changed so much since we were kids. And Sinbad improvised this whole thing about a scuba diving accident involving uh, great white sharks. The way that Sinbad just exaggerates the entire thing to the point where he's talking about his friend's eyeball popping out. The way that Sinbad tells it, it just gets progressively more and more insane. And that worked for me. Like, that actually got a genuine laugh from me. But it's moments like that that provide any amount of humor or any amount of genuine comedy when it comes to this film. And it's not really due to anything in the script. It's moments like when Kevin has to think on his feet at a party at Gary's place, and he has to explain this lettering on a jacket that he's wearing, a suit that he's wearing, because he had to grab the first bit of a luggage that he saw at the airport. And the only thing that's in the luggage is a suit for Groverton Funeral Home. So he's got to think on his feet and come up with all these different explanations for GFH. And the way that Sinbad does it is actually really funny. You know, G strings for the huge. Yeah, you know, this is a lot of like on the spot, off the cuff stuff that he does that actually provides a chuckle or two. But there's nothing that's like laugh out loud, tell your side split funny about this script or about the movie. There are some fun shenanigans that Kevin gets involved with throughout the plot. I do appreciate the fact that the writers set up a lot of roadblocks for Kevin and made him have to stick to the lie, and he couldn't just override things that easily. He couldn't just tailor the lie to fit his personal preferences. So he has to stick with eating the vegetarian food, which makes him really desperate for McDonald's. And speaking of McDonald's, this is one giant McDonald's advertisement in a lot of ways. And it's because the writers thought it would be funny that Kevin would always have a craving for McDonald's. It wasn't McDonald's idea, it was the writer's idea. And I don't think it's really that funny. It's more of a distraction because it's just like, did they fund this movie with McDonald's money? Apparently, that's not the case, but it makes it seem like that's one of those instances because there's so much McDonald's product placement in this movie. There is a good scene, though, that provides a good payoff for the whole vegetarian thing when Gary and Kevin are spending time with together on a bridge, and Gary's eating a Big Mac and some fries, and Kevin breaks and then grabs the Big Mac and starts eating it, and he, of course, lies about him being vulnerable, and that brings him and Gary closer. And I did like that moment, but that's really all the McDonald's product placement you really needed. You didn't need to go as far as this film did when it comes to his McDonald's product placement. He literally goes into a McDonald's and makes an order at one point. I also do like stuff like the scene when Kevin has to perform dental surgery and he doesn't know what he's doing. So he just overhears some colleagues and some doctors talking about how he's got to, wash and, get ready for the surgery. And he just grabs the first jar that he sees, and he puts Novocaine on his arms, and so his hands just go completely limp, and so he has to find a way to pull out this guy's tooth while his hands are entirely limp in front of a whole group of people. And I did like that. I thought that was pretty clever and pretty funny. Uh, Speaking of some clever dental related stuff, I liked the scene near the beginning when Kevin is thrust onto the stage at this school and it's career day and he has to explain all these different gross slides of dental related stuff, and he's just progressively more and more grossed out by the slides and he doesn't know what to do with it. So there are some good fish out of water moments with this script. And I do think it has a good heart to it as well. I will give it credit for that. But I would say the fish out of water stuff is definitely some of the highlights of this screenplay. The party scene, the scene with the wine, when Kevin has to act as if he's some sort of sommelier and impress the guests, and he just uses his wit to get out of the situation. But even that scene comes with some negatives, and that's really a lot of reasons why this film is just so below average. Is because, okay, you have a scene that for the most part works. You got the GFH comedy, you have the wine tasting sequence, and then you ruin it with this just very cliched bit where all this stuffy white people get drunk on wine and start singing Brick House. And I was just like, that's just dumb. That's so cliched and it's not funny. And that just happened a lot where it felt like, okay, the script is building up to something. It looks like it's going to get to something that is either clever or really funny, but then it just doesn't land and it doesn't nail the punchline. And it happened a lot. And there's a lot of stuff in this film that I think the writers thought was really funny that I honestly thought was just rather dumb. Like the whole thing with speed golfing. That was just stupid. That wasn't funny to me. That was just dumb and lazy. Very lazy attempt at comedy. Like, what if they golf, but they go really fast? And there was some funny moments in the golfing bit. The scene where uh, Kevin and Ron are talking about washing their balls, but Kevin doesn't know the context of it, so he thinks that Ron is talking about cleaning his actual balls. So that was actually pretty funny. That was pretty hilarious, actually. I think that was one of the funniest scenes in the movie. But then you have the speed golfing afterwards, and that's just dumb. You have a basketball scene later because Gary's son, Jason, is into basketball and he's not very good at it. And he's a nerdy kid, so he gets bullied. So then, predictably, Kevin joins in a game and they beat the bullies and they make them look like fools. And it was just one of those things you're like, I've seen this so many times. There's just a lot of stuff in this script that feels like a total retread. And it makes for not really that entertaining of a movie at points because it just feels like you're just going over recycled plot points. The drama with the mob guys is not effective. They're not good antagonists. They're not memorable antagonists. They're honestly pretty lousy and just the most stereotypical mob henchmen you can think of. Their boss isn't much better and happy. And the drama with the family, it's more been there, done that stuff. The youngest girl in the family, she has her issues with misbehaving and so on and so forth. And uh, Kevin helps with that. But I don't think it's really a lot. She's not the one that really is doing that much. So I think the script doesn't really have a lot for the girl, the youngest kid to do in this. Uh, she just like keeps Kevin's secret and is smarter than she might appear to be, Sarah. Instead, there's more with Jason and with his older sister Brooke, and Brooke's a goth girl, and she is dealing with a breakup, and it's just a lot of typical stuff where Kevin tells her to try to form a relationship with people who are not dead because she's really into dead poets and stuff like that. It's just very predictable, very familiar kind of stuff. And even like the ending, it's kind of anticlimactic because it takes place during this relay. And this is after, the real Derek Bond showed up and he was kidnapped along with the rest of the Young family. And this is also, I think, the moment, I think prior to this, um, Gary grows a spine and stands up to his boss and quits. And he really attributes that to Kevin because Kevin could have ran away with his other friend, the tattoo artist Larry, but he chose to go back and help Gary and his family. And that's what leads him to ultimately get caught by Paulie and Joey, the mob guys. And they're also taking the Young family hostage along with the real Dr. Bond. And predictably, Kevin goes with the mob guys. He reveals the lie. Gary and his family feel bad. They're upset at him for lying to them. But then Gary gets over it, realizes all the good that Kevin has done for him and his family, and he decides to risk it all to go save him. Kevin escapes out of the car that Joey and Paulie are driving into the relay race. It's not really a relay race. It's just a regular race. It's like a race for charity. And so he escapes into the race and Gary runs alongside him helps him get away from the mob guys, but they still wind up getting cornered by them. But because of the fact that Kevin already won the lottery, he gives the ticket to the mob guys and his debts are paid. And then you flash forward at least a year, probably, and Kevin it has written a very successful handbook for house guests, and he's visiting Gary and his family for Christmas. And they sing a Christmas song, but with burgers for lyrics. And then that's the end of House Guest. The cast, they're trying. I mean, Sinbad and Phil Hartman, they're not bad. They're a decent enough duo, but they're only as good as the material that they're given. And I really do feel Phil Hartman, he's trying as hard as he can to be this straight man, this harried and upset husband. But it really feels like a role that's tailor made for somebody like Charles Grodin more than Phil Hartman and his strengths. So he feels a little out of place at points, but I still think he ultimately makes it work because of his chemistry with Sinbad. And Sinbad, when he's thinking on his feet and he's improvising, he's good. When he's trying to do anything else, nowhere near as good and nowhere near as strong. Uh, Jeffrey Jones is a jerk off, but he's a jerk off in real life, so it's not really that impressive of a performance. Kim Greist is okay as Emily, Gary's wife. Stan Shaw I liked as Larry, the tattoo guy. Tony Longo and Paul Ben Victor, I mean, they did their jobs. They played cliched, stereotypical mob guys, but they added nothing to their roles to make them stand out. Mason Adams was a pretty decent, cantankerous boss. Chauncey Leopardi, who played Squints in The Sandlot, he was all right as Jason. Same goes for Talia Cedar, who played Sarah, and Kim Murphy as Brooke, or Ron Glass as the real Dr. Bond. Kevin Jordan, though, is Brooke's boyfriend, Steve, ST3. He was pretty awful. He was trying to be like a wannabe Vanilla Ice, and it wasn't working at all. The cinematography by Jerzy Selinsky, it's so-so. The editing by Eric Sears at points, I think, actually is genuinely good. For instance, in the improv montage, when Sinbad is coming up with all these different explanations for GFH, but a lot of the time, the score, I mean, not the score, the editing was a little bit off, just like the direction was. And speaking of the score, this score sucked. This is a terrible score by John Debney. I really did not like this score. I thought it was detestable, to be perfectly honest. It really hurt the movie because it's just way too over the top. It's just a bunch of la 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 and speed golfing, and it was just way too over the top and silly, and it brought the film down on more than one occasion. I don't know what the hell John Debney was thinking or smoking with this score. It was trying way too hard to be whimsical and comedic, and in the process, it made the film less funny. It's rather fitting that it has so much McDonald's product placement because it it fills you up and it is honestly about as memorable as a average trip to the McDonald's drive-through. But anyway, that is my thoughts on House Guest, and until next time, I'll see you later. See ya.